Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association. John, one of the other big pushes, not just from the president, but from others, has been to raise the age when you can buy an assault weapon from 18 to 21. The president says that's a pretty good idea. He may be backing off from that based on what happened with the NRA, but there are other groups such as retailers such as Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, and now even Kroger who are saying they won't sell to anybody that's under 21. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, that's the decision that those retail outlets have to make, and they may have some constitutional limits. You know, one discussion that's surfacing is it's a Second Amendment, it's a right. Federal law and state law both define the breakpoint age-wise, and so the question is coming up is if you're old enough to buy it and it's your right to own that type of weapon, is this sort of like the baker and the cake
cases before the Supreme Court right now?
Is can someone licensed by the federal government to engage in an activity violate a protected right by saying we're not going to sell to someone ages 18 to 21? Well, they could just as easily say we're not going to sell to men because they're typically the shooters, or we're not going to sell to people of a particular racial background because they're more frequently using guns to kill people. They run the risk of stepping into some protected class issues.
But isn't the change that you see with these large retailers a sign that public opinion has changed pretty dramatically since this last shooting, and so therefore they're trying to respond to that because they're worried about what will happen to their customer base? Not just people buying guns, but people buying other things in their stores.
It could be. I think it's driven by their calculation and perhaps even miscalculation of their buying base. You know, who are their customers and what do their customers want, and do their customers place blame on them for these types of weapons being available generally?
Another fallout has been these affinity programs that some groups have with the NRA, so, and also some things that have been going on in terms of discounts that are being given on fuel and other things. There's a back and forth fight on both sides, and down in Georgia in particular about this with Delta Airlines. So
Delta just got whacked enormously over it.
What are your thoughts about that? And in particular, does the Tennessee Firearms Association have any discounts like this or problems that you're going to have some pushback on from some people that have given them?
I think it's a business decision. Again, most of those merchants are doing it because they think it either improves or minimizes the risk they have from their customers. Most gun owners could care less. You know, if they get the benefit, great. If they don't, they view their Second Amendment rights as more important. It will just cause them to boycott or curtail their activities at those venues. TFA, for its members, does have a limited number of affinity type programs. Mostly they're, for example, discounts at gun stores. So if you go in, they may have a discounted range membership, or my law office, for example, if you're a TFA member, you get a 5% discount on fees.
But now most of the firearm stores that specialize in that, at least the ones around here, seem to be sticking with being able to stay at the 18-year-old level. Did they see an opportunity there to be able to maybe make some sales they wouldn't ordinarily make? Absolutely.
You see the rank and file full-time dealers, you know, the typical gun store, cheering on the fact that their big competitors are pulling out of the market and making, for their customer base, bad decisions.
But in the wake of what happened in Florida, what's happened in other places, are there any changes in the background checks, in the bump stocks, in many of the other things that are being discussed? Any of those that the NRA and the Tennessee Firearms Association are willing to look at and make changes about?
I don't know that any of them have. There's a lot of proposals out there, and I think the problem is most of the proposals are emotional reactions that are not backed up by data from either the TBI or the FBI that support the conclusion that making this change would positively reduce the incident rate.
Back on the congressional level, the House had just passed a bill that also included some changes, I believe, in the background check, but also was combined with every state recognizing every other state's gun permit opportunity, so almost reciprocity in all 50 states. Is that likely to be a casualty as well? As Congress probably just going to say, well, we're not going to pass anything about guns one way or the other?
I think any bill that's moving forward that gun owners might want at this point in time runs the risk of having amendments added to it that would have so much negative baggage that it's going to kill the bill.
I mean, you had a bill before the Tennessee legislature in one of the committees on the very day that this happened in Florida, and of course that bill immediately got deep sixed for a while. But do you see the push in Tennessee to continue to be, particularly to allow gun permit holders to bring their guns into even more areas? I think it's called be able to take it any place that police officers can take their guns.
There was, yeah, that's correct. There was a bill that I think Representative Matheny had up that day that would have basically classified a permit holder as being like an off-duty police officer for purposes of where can they carry. Because there is a distinct difference under the statutes. An off-duty officer can carry almost anywhere, and a permit holder has a confusing, almost incomprehensible patchwork of restrictions. Do you see a push
of that to continue to pass it this session?
I don't think that's going to pass this session because of the way the committee killed it. I do think there's a continued push that's moving forward to restrict and reduce the number of gun-free zones.
John Harris of the Tennessee Firearms Association is our guest on Inside Politics. Back to continue our conversation with him after this break.